A quorum is present.
Lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's just open up number 4 right here. Public comment. Any public comment? All right, nothing to start. We'll just move past that on to number 5 for possible action. Approval of the previous meetings from the April 30th, 2024. Any comments, questions, concerns?
No, I wasn't part of that meeting, but I did read through it and kind of got the gist of what everybody said, and so.
Perfect. Do I hear a motion to approve the meetings?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes take it 4-0. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6. Update and activity report on the Carson City Urban Wildlife Committee. Rob?
So I would, if I may, Mr. Chair, it was kind of a slow month or so. They did have Carson City Parks had some outreach with youth groups. We had the youth outdoor experience, which happened out at the Capital City Gun Club here this past weekend. That was great. They had a bunch of wildlife education tents and whatnot out there. And I think, according to Ryan Brock, the tentative number was up into the 200 to 300 range of families that came and participated in that. So it was real positive. We're still waiting for NDOW to publish their webinars on living with coyotes, as well as a couple others on what to do if you have a bat problem, or what to do if you have a baby birds making nests in your eaves, all those things that people here in our community especially call about and are concerned about. They're also going to do a kind of partner with the Greenhouse Garden Center and talk about different plant shrubs and flowers that can be planted to, there's nothing that's deer resistant, but certainly to something that the deer don't particularly care for as much as other things. So trying to assist in that effort. So we're waiting on that and waiting on them to schedule those. When those happen, we'll get with the Carson City Parks and Rec and see if we can't get them to publicize that a little bit for us. And then spoke with Mayor Bagwell. She is still on board with maybe in the fall to, or whatever time we feel is appropriate, to designate a kind of a urban wildlife awareness and education month. We had originally talked about fall, but the more we kind of get into it, spring might be a better option. We can kind of decide that. I'd like to coincide it with, when we know Department of Wildlife is going to be holding some of these webinars, so we can kind of coincide it during that time frame, and promote it. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Rob. Anything else, Tim? Kurt? Cool. Sweet. Moving on to number 7, an update from the May 3rd and 4th, 2024 Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners meeting. Is that you, Tim? Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else attended, but I was there for both days, April 3rd and 4th. A lot of it was usual business, especially the first day, and of course the big draw for it was kind of a big crowd, was the tag issue, setting the final quotas. So the commission takes the recommendations of NDOW and then takes the input of the cabs and then makes a recommendation on the quotas. There was a lot of discussion on kind of how those numbers are calculated and well, I'll go backwards a little bit. So I did speak up on the bear quota, eliminating the sow quota. So I did testify about that. Washoe County Cab was there. They gave a pretty thorough explanation, which was pretty much our same position. So I pretty much just seconded theirs. But once again, it didn't go anywhere. Unfortunately, I do think if they'd get rid of the sow quota that there would be more boars harvested because people would have time to hunt the entire season. And of course, for that type of hunt, people are going to be looking for the biggest animal they can find. And there's not that pressure to instantly try to fill their tag. So I think they're making a mistake, but the status quo was kind of held on that. And
What, look, can I ask real quick, was the entire commission kind of in agreement that it shouldn't move, or were there just certain members that said that we shouldn't make a change there?
It seemed pretty unanimous with the
Really?
commission, and
Okay.
I think it was,
I mean, who are we to look at what the science says, I guess? I don't know. That
Yeah.
kind of drives me crazy.
it was a
but-
little frustrating.
Yeah,
because
it is frustrating.
It's been a couple years, it's been brought up, and it's obvious to see the pitfalls that have happened with it through the hunting data that's collected. And
Was there much conversation about it between them?
no, not a lot.
So Washoe Cab and Carson Cab were the only ones in support of doing away with the female quota?
I believe there was one other cab that spoke up in favor, and that person went after me, and I didn't catch which cab it was,
I'd have been Douglas County.
and he just said the same. He said, "Well, it's the same as the previous two."
Okay.
So he didn't do a long speech, but
I just find it fascinating that they want us to give input, but yet they don't want to follow any of the input we give. So it kind of drives me crazy sometimes. I don't know. Even when the science supports it, okay. Thank you
And-
for that. I apologize to go on my rant, but
that's all right.
the heck.
I'm kind of frustrated on that particular issue myself. They did have a nice presentation they did on Black Bear on the first day, and I think it kind of confirms what we all know. There's a huge population in California. They move over to Nevada, and hunting has zero impact on the population
more-
as a whole.
More die from mortality on roadway mortality than anything that hunting
Right.
will ever cause, right? It's just, okay. The one meeting I wish I would have gone to.
Yeah, I understand. They did do the habitat report. They talked a lot about green energy and the potential impact, because some of the green energy projects would be things like windmills or solar power, which takes up huge amounts of land. And, particularly in some of them could be areas where certainly we're trying to preserve habitat for sage grouse. But it would also possibly restrict access in areas for other hunting, almost any other hunting. They did mention a poaching incident up in Galena where some deer had been shot, and that was unfortunate. It seems like it wasn't anyone hunting. It seems like someone just
for fun.
for fun, which is sad to hear. And they do always talk about their
And that was an active investigation. There's still,
yes,
Right.
yeah. So anytime it's an active investigation, they can kind of tell you what they're investigating. But they they don't want to tell any details because that helps because they want to build their case. And they did do an update on the, there was that case, trying to think of the unit, maybe 231 or 241. It was over in the eastern side of the state where someone had used a drone to push the bucks off of private property on the public land, and that took them a couple years, and they did end up getting I believe at least one person pled guilty, and I think the other person was going to go to trial. But that was an amazing investigation. The level of work they put in to do that case, it was unbelievable.
Yep.
They were doing DNA testing and all kinds of forensics, and using the people's social media against them. Essentially, people dumb enough to
Post things, right?
you know.
Doesn't go away.
It's bad enough you do it, but then you post it and everybody can see the video. It's unbelievable.
That'll definitely be coming in front of the Operation Game Thief Board. So we once we find out the full details on that, once everything's done, we can report that back to you.
They talked a little bit about a South Shell land acquisition, so in the Shell Creek Mountains, and it sounded like a pretty good deal to me. They're trying to get some of those little parcels that are not yet developed and exchange those and kind of consolidate some of the properties down there. They called it the South Shell land acquisition. They talked a little bit about bighorn sheep going to Utah, and I believe we talked about that at our last meeting. They did approve that. The waiting period for moving away from a 10-year waiting period if you draw a tag to a once in a lifetime tag, they tabled that. They sent it back to the TAC. They decided it needed, so they did no action. They decided it needed more thought.
And do we know what species that was on? I didn't catch that one.
We talked
bighorn.
about that a lot on the last
It was all the bighorn sheep,
It was all on
I
big
believe.
and goat. Okay.
Yeah.
And moose. I'm sure. I mean, right? That's a lifetime.
Yeah, moving it from, if you draw a tag, you have to wait 10 years, or should they move it to once in a lifetime to kind of give more people opportunity?
Yeah. If you're successful, yeah. Cool.
Shed hunting brought out a lot of comment. Should non-residents start later than residents?
Or not at all.
Or not at all. And should they have some type of license, like a hunting license, if they do shed hunting, or in addition to
What was the outcome of that? Like,
um
was the commission favorable of all those things potentially? When we brought it up the last time, they didn't take any action on it then, and
now I can't remember exactly what they did.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll have to go back and review that at the meeting, but they did move forward. I'm just not sure exactly what they decided to move forward with.
really, okay.
And then they talked a little bit about electronic tags and licenses, so you can have it just on your phone as opposed to carrying a physical tag or license.
That's my personal
And then for the second day was it was all about the tags and the quotas, and went over every single species. The big changes were deer tags. So Endow made a recommended, I believe it was around 11,000, and I think they cut it back to 7,000. And it was basically two areas, Area 7 and Area 10. They cut the tags 50%, based on recommendations from primarily the Elko Cab was really pushing hard for that, for the cuts.
Just yeah, recruitment was poor and a lot of different issues, and migration numbers those are the two biggest migrations we have. So
Yeah.
they were really down, I guess. And
Yeah, the counts are way down, but yet, and Endow did say we've had good recruitment the last 2 years in those areas, but the way they they base the tag quota in part on buck to doe ratio, and for most areas they try to maintain 30 bucks per 100 does. Some areas are different because they have different objectives. But the way to get to that number is, in part, is they count all of the fawns, and then they say, well, 50% of the fawns are bucks, and they put that in the buck category. And the commissions, the cabs, the Elko Cab in particular, is really not happy with that, the way that's done, because if you have a really big fawn year, you're counting all these fawns as bucks, which nobody wants to go out and spend all their points and draw a tag and hunt spikes. You know, they're going to be little spikes, little forks. So they want, the way they came up with their number is they said, well, we should exclude them and then recalculate the buck to doe ratio and then set the tags according to that. And that's how they came up with their cuts, and it came out to about a 50% cut in 10 and 7, and there were some cuts in other areas. Really dropped the number of tags. The commission did accept that recommendation, and they did move forward with it. And but
hopefully it works.
I hope it works, because a lot of people are not going to have the opportunity this coming year. That's a big cut in tags.
Funny how they just pick and choose which science they want to listen to, and that's more pseudoscience than the other one.
Yeah. The quota model is, I don't know. I mean, I kind of get what Elko Cab is saying to a certain extent. They're trying to drive, have better success on larger deer and give them the opportunity to grow. But you also have to take into consideration the science part of it, which is the recruitment and winters and things that we can't control, like fires and stuff like that, right? And would you rather them just die because of those elements, or would you rather, hunters take them for human consumption, right? So I think,
and that was brought out by Endow. It's like, well, if we preserve these two big groups that are moving forward, if we try to preserve them, till they're 4 or 5 years old and not hunt them, then there's no guarantee they'll be there.
that's right.
Right?
It's total speculation.
Yeah. So that's the risk. That's the risk. So you've greatly reduced opportunity in exchange for kind of hoping.
Yeah.
Hoping and praying.
Yeah, we'll see in the upcoming years. The truth will be told. That we went through this already before. So when I was young, I'd hunt Area 7 every single year. Like, that was where I grew up hunting, and they did the exact same thing. They allowed for all these smaller bucks, and yeah, the deer were smaller, but they were a lot more plentiful and a lot more success ratio, which helped drive the herds and make it what it eventually became, right? And then when they dumped did exactly what these guys want to do and make the quota so small that you to try and drive bigger bucks and try and grow bigger bucks, the opposite happened. We saw declines and more road kills and stuff. And of course, that was prior to all the overpasses, the wildlife overpasses being created and stuff. So I think that's going to play a huge part in vehicle mortality, right? Like, we've proven that works. Like, we set the pace, state of Nevada did, for the country. Other states throughout the country use that exact same model and have been able to really help their numbers. But so I think, we got to take that into consideration, but time will tell, right? Like we've already been down this path once before, just in my lifetime. So, I'm not that old. I mean, I know I got tons of gray hair, but I'm not that old. And we saw the complete opposite of that, right? So it didn't really help so much. So
That's it.
awesome, Tim. Great report. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments from anyone? Moving on to agenda item number 8. Discussion only, reports informational. Anything that we want to discuss for 8A, department activity report?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if you guys read through all these. I kind of geek out over them. So, the chronic wasting disease, anything on that presentation should be really good. Whoever's going to be attending the commission meeting. The tag allocation and application hunt committee presentation, that report was pretty good. I think, again, we got real scientists doing this and providing the data, and the committee, I think, did a good job organizing that data. Other than that, it was nice to see some of the Wildlife Heritage Project presentations. There's a lot of them this meeting, so that's going to take up a huge part of the meeting time, I can tell you that. And then also there's the duck stamp and upland game stamp projects as well, which is, I think, part of agenda item number 9, so I won't go too much into that. But I think it's good information. It's kind of what makes the commission meetings, I think, so advantageous and interesting, and where we kind of learn as cab members too, right? And so I'm not prepared to, I support pretty much everything that they are going to have here. That report on the sharp-tailed grouse, I don't know if anybody recalls, Kurt, you were on the committee on the board during that time when they did the initial sharp-tailed grouse release, and I was really, really surprised to see the numbers and the quotas, how well they've been doing. So they're actually branching out and going into different areas, which is really, really cool, man. Like Nevada has never really had sharp-tailed grouse except for way up in the north on the border. And those, I think, were kind of overflows from different states, So I think it's pretty cool that we're going to have another upland game species here to add to everything else that we have, right? Nevada has more living ecosystems than any other state there is in the state, which is kind of neat, So
Do you want to say anything on that, sharp-tailed grouse? Yeah. Can you state your name for the record, too? You click it and you'll see the button turn on. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Board Commissioners. Justin Small, Wildlife Staff Specialist, Upland Game Coordinator for the state of Nevada. As Robert said, we are going to be given an update on the current state of sharp-tailed grouse in Nevada. The population that you was referencing that was translocated from 2013 to 2017, that has been a success. We've got 4 established leks within the Bull Run Basin. I wish I had a thumb drive I could actually plug in and show you what I'm going to be updating the commission on. But it's really cool. Over the last decade, we've had 4 active leks, and that population has showed extreme resiliency, especially after the Sugarloaf fire that was 233,000 acres that happened in 2018. And like you do see with most galliform populations, you'll see that population trajectory kind of overshoot the year of that, and there's a lag effect, and that population dipped after the Sugarloaf fire, and that was on the back end or on the shoulder of the Martin fire, which was 430,000 acres.
big acreage.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Big acreage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what we realized, and this kind of gets into a little bit of my background, I'll pull this up. So my background was, I did my PhD on greater sage grouse response to conifer removals across the landscape in northern Utah, and is not just, didn't want to be just a one-trick pony, but definitely been involved in galliform research for the last decade. And when you're dealing with a galliform population, Columbia sharp-tailed grouse, especially with all the disturbances, and up in that northern area, it's not so much anthropogenic disturbances as far as mining and solar renewable and green energy renewable projects is proposed to go in, but mainly it's conversion to cheatgrass. And that combine that fire cycle that's closing that loop every 12 years is coming back. And we feel like the population's at a level right now that we need to infuse or augmentate some genetic diversity back in, where we don't get into what we call, I'll go to this and I'll explain a little bit about this. So in upland game bird management research and on the biology side, not so much on the ecology side, we have something we call a demographic trap. And that number is a little bit hard to, it's a moving target, but when you get down below, say a couple hundred animals and they get birds, individuals, and they get separated, you get into a situation where you can have genetic drift or density inverse dependence. The lack of diversity reduces fitness and overall population viability through time. And what we're hoping to do with working with Stephanie Gall at Boise State University, we are actually taking blood samples from the birds that we are bringing in from Idaho. And we're taking samples from the birds that we have here resident in the Bull Run, and we're going to be able to track genetic diversity gain through time to see if we're actually preventing that from happening. There's a little bit of method of my madness here. I want to actually do that for a lot of our let complexes for greater sage grouse across the state. I'm using this as a pilot project because there's something that happens when birds get to a certain point, things go below the surface of the feathers, not the way they're interacting. It's not ecology anymore, the way they're interacting with their environment. It becomes the way they're physiologically interacting inside their own population. We call that a demographic trap or the allele effect. And so those mechanisms that's driving population regulation at that time is really more biology-based than ecology. So how we're going to determine that is we're going to use some new genomics techniques based out of Boise State to track that genetic diversity gain through time. And I'm hoping to superimpose that on some of our greater sage grouse populations where we see whether whatever stochastic event it is, whether it's drought, fire, cheatgrass invasion, surface disturbance by anthropogenic causes from mining or whatever that is, we see these let complexes start constricted, and when they get to some point, it just doesn't seem, even in good years, we can't recover them. And we think what's happening possibly is they're genetically imploding. They've hit a genetic bottleneck. And it's the reduction of heterozygosity, in other words, genetic diversity, that's causing that. And we're wanting to be able to track that and see if that's what's happening. Because we can see, if you look at the elect data through the last 30, 40 years, we have very comprehensive elect data in Nevada. Sean Espinosa, Stan Stiver, Willie Maloney, and all these folks through time has done, they've took copious notes through sage grouse elect data through time. And I can see by looking at it coming in that you can see these populations, once they get to a certain point, they just start closing in. So I'm wanting to use some of this data to possibly point to management actions and things we can do adaptively in real time. Didn't mean to go down such a rabbit
No, I
hole
think
there.
it's great, man. I could sit here and geek out with you all day long
Yeah.
on it. Can I ask just one question? Have we ever considered the opportunity to try and redistribute birds, or is it just too costly to do that? Is it not effective? I know other states have had some success in it. I know, like Nebraska, for example, and I know completely different topography, right? But I mean, they have redistributed and they've been able to get in pretty impressive recruitment numbers, and especially die off from predators, right? They've been able to kind of manage that as well. And I thought, I wonder if that's even possible in our state, given our topography, given our population, all that.
I think it's possible. It's tricky with translocations, especially with sage grouse and arid land grouse. The reason it's working in the Bull Run is in northern Nevada, they figured it back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and up to, it started fading away in the 70s when cheatgrass evasion really started getting prolific up that and changing our native bunchgrass communities, and that our sharptails, Columbia sharptail grouse relied on. But they were widely distributed, and a lot didn't change. We had some big fires, but I think what happened is the populations, for some reason, that they become decoupled enough, they got isolated, and then they lost the ability to, and I think, one more point, I think they got isolated, like you mentioned before, to that northern Shoshone Basin,
Yeah.
Idaho population, the Burnell population, Duck Valley up on the other side of the borders. Then populations become disconnected and they started kind of imploding a little bit. Some of this heterozygosity, genetic bottleneck stuff was happening probably back then. But what we've done through habitat restoration efforts in that northern Elko County and the Bull Run, and especially even up towards Merritt Mountain, that is some of our most resilient habitat, and it's still pretty intact. And where the Bull Run population is at, when I look at that, there's no reason the translocation project shouldn't have worked. There's obviously things you can't control: environmental events, stochastic events, fires, predation. That's hard to control. We've had a 400,000% increase. It's unbelievable in raven populations, and now we're able to control them. Not to digress, but we just got our raven take from 2,500 ramped up to 12,500 this year. And some of those polygons that I'm doing raven removal on, working with our wildlife staff specialist, Pat Jackson, and Wildlife Services, they superimpose on the Columbia sharp-tailed grouse area, superimpose on some of those sage grouse management polygons. We're removing some of those ravens, so that can help too. But overall, translocations is kind of a last-ditch effort to recover species. It's definitely a tool in the toolbox. But when you think about it range-wide, it would be hard to do that on a species like sage grouse. It's almost, I don't want to say anything's impossible, but, and we've had success. Dr. Pete Coates with USGS is one of the leading scientists with translocations of arid land grouse species, and it works. But it's kind of like threading the needle. There's a lot of things that's got to line up for that to happen. Yeah.
Well, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So then you guys are, if I understood you correctly, so you're taking from Idaho and then from that bull, and you're just basically one-for-one trading
Yeah, and
to
what
just diversify the genetics.
Corbett, exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. We were actually we was on par for 22 and 23, so that hard winter to go to Colorado, which is the farthest eastern extent of what we thought then was Columbia sharp-tailed grouse populations. But through the same data that we're using to track genetic diversity, that's how I got into this, through that conversation with Columbia. Kathy Griffin reached out and said, I know Sean had this on the books, and you guys are on the books for this spring. But there's a colleague of mine at the University of Wyoming, through using this single nucleotide polymorphism data, his PhD student found out that those aren't Columbia sharp-tailed grouse. Those are plain sharp-tailed grouse. So if we would have went ahead and done it, we would have introduced plain sharp-tailed grouse in our native bull run population and diluted that. It would have probably helped population fitness, but it would actually diluted pure Columbia sharp-tailed grouse stock that we originally got from Idaho. And so the furthest east that we know of now is an isolated population in Teton National Park, but really the core population of Columbia sharp-tailed grouse is in Idaho. So I immediately dispatched that, and like, we're not going that route. So I called Jeff Knetter and Shane Roberts, which is the wildlife bureau chief, and Jeff Knetter's my position up there, and said, hey, what would you guys be willing to do? This is like, we got to decide this in real time. We were going to go ahead this spring if it can't happen this spring and it takes till next year, but we would like to see if you guys could help us out and accommodate us. And they were more than glad. They said, totally agree with what you're doing, the scientific approach. I ran some numbers, did a quick and dirty integration population model with Stephen Matthews at USGS to show that this population has a trajectory to move through time. We're gaining numbers. They just want to make sure that it wasn't going down and they're throwing birds at a declining population. But they knew the history. They were there for 5 years in the beginning of this successful project. They just wanted to make sure that it was resilient. Once we showed them the data, they're like, we're on board. They even went further and said that we're going to do 2 more years. So we got 20 females from them this year. They're going to do 20 more females next year for 2025 and 2026. So we're pretty excited.
Great. Yeah, that's great.
And we're trying to create that genetic corridor to link up through Merritt Mountain, right up in the Shoshone Basin, that way to prevent this having to go back and reaugmentate populations.
That's great.
So, yeah,
Well, good work. Thank you.
yeah, you bet.
All right, any other discussion on agenda item 8 before we move over to consent?
No, I mean, given what we just said, I still will stand behind. I support, especially 8C. I absolutely support the department's approach on that, and commend them for their efforts. We got such great guys working for it. Got great guys and gals working for us. So appreciate you guys and all the work you do.
All right, perfect. We'll move on to consent agenda items. Just a heads up, we are going to pull I and J, 9I and 9J, due to the public comment that's going to come with it. Anything else from the board that we want to pull? This was a lot of cool information, but there's really nothing I want to discuss. It was cool to read.
That's really not.
and
And
all that.
I mean, the
It's not.
biggest thing for this meeting is where we set fishing seasons and regulations.
Yeah.
But as you hopefully all saw, there wasn't a lot of changes. They did close Smith Creek Ranch, which I think was very positive, given the fact that there's been a change in ownership there, and the department's not actively planning there anymore, which I think is a good thing. I think that's a waste of resource. And they're concerned about trespass and stuff. So from a legal standpoint, us being a good partner, I think that's a great idea, and I support that.
All right.
Other than that, the upland game bird and season and bag limits. Did anybody else see anything that was changing there? Is there some changes? Can you
Let's
kind of
pull
brief
that.
us on that?
Hold on. Do we want to just pull it and have a comment for it?
Yeah, why don't I do that? I'll just pull it
Yeah,
990,
I know.
and if you can come up during that time and just give us some. Okay.
All right, perfect. Then I think for that you were good with the fishing. You didn't want to pull it, right?
No,
'Cause it
I
was-
don't want
all right.
to. I don't particularly care to.
Do I hear Kirk? Did you have anything? Of course, right when I asked you.
No, I'm good.
Tim, you're good. All right, perfect. Then let's just get the rest out of the way right now.
Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion to accept all items under agenda item number 9, except for
IJ.
I, J, and O that we are pulling for discussion and public comment.
Perfect. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes take it unanimously 4-0 with Member Thompson out for all items in consent agenda except for 9I, J, and O. All right. Let's pull consent agenda item 9I, energy and solar projects up. I'm actually, since these tend to be the exact same thing, I'm just going to pull them both together.
Okay.
I and J, being energy and solar project updates at the June 29, 2024 meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners. A presentation will be provided on the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, solar pragmatic environmental impact statement. The commission will discuss possibly providing a letter of comment on this project, as well as an overview of renewable energy across Nevada. For I and J, since this was actually something that was mentioned that for public comment, I think it's appropriate to let the public come up and comment first, and then the board can follow.
Sure.
Please state your name, Gene.
For the record, Gene Green. Board, how are you guys doing? Okay, I wanted to comment on these because a few years ago when they started looking at this project with the solar panels down at Tonopah, and the amount of land, they were going to cover 119,000 acres. Also covering the research behind it. NDOW was doing a great job of trying to research a great deal of it, but the BLM wasn't exactly looking for research ahead of time. And nothing has happened so far that I'm aware of, because I was just down there a couple of weeks ago. Some of what happens when you cover these lands with the solar panels or windmills, or like they have that tower outside of Tonopah, which there's only 3 of those in America, and they basically, when birds get within a certain distance from it, they cook in the air and fall out of the air. There were a couple of endangered species. One was just a little tiny mouse, but it's found nowhere else in the world. NDOW jumped on it and was trying to experiment with moving them all around the desert in Nevada. I don't know where that's gone so far, but these people were going to cover. They don't. When you cover 119,000 acres of land, you destroy the land underneath it. Nothing's going to grow under the panel. It's blocked from the sun. The things that do, and that's an area where there isn't any plant life out there that doesn't have to have sun. Another issue was are you guys familiar with the Miller Springs rest area there outside of Tonopah?
Yeah.
It could very seriously affect some endangered, one in particular, owl species, that they use that for water source. Things like that. I looked through this, and it's a couple of lines. Do we approve or disapprove that the commission's going to give them a letter on? I'd like for somebody I can't go this weekend, or I would make an appearance at these workshops, because I think it's important to look at the amount of space. As was mentioned here, the restricted areas, they say, oh, we're not, you can go in, you just can't go through them. Well, 119,000 acres is a lot of land. If you need to hunt on the other side of that area, you got to drive 100 miles to get around it. That is restricting it, whether they want to say it is or not. And when you get out into these desert areas, it's not like there's a road every 3 miles. You've got to follow the established roads, otherwise you're doing the same damage they're doing to possibly some touchy land. So anyway, that was my comment. I'd like to, hopefully somebody can make a comment or go to one of the workshops and find out where they are. I have no problems with sun power or anything unless they're destroying something with it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you, Gene.
All right, Mr. French, state your name for the record, please, in 2 minutes.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. This fragmentation of environments is happening all over the place. I'd love to see them make these sun deals over the freeways, on the building roofs and such. Every time they make a change, they change the wind patterns, they change the heat flow, they even change some of the water in the subsoils. So the water flow in their water tables actually change. The whole thing at that portion fragments such a big area that it impacts every insect at every bush. It impacts every bird that would be at that bush if it had access. Birds aren't necessarily wanting to go under to get to what they're looking to eat. They have to have visual of those areas. They have to have a hunting space, and those solar panels are very dangerous. And there's a wonderful study on the heat towers you're talking about on that, Mr. Green. The deal for that is huge. That small mouse, that was huge. And so to me, this whole thing should be considered a lot more than it looks like it has. Environmental studies would take years because of the amount of space alone. So I would love to have y'all really push for this. And I brought up a beaver thing earlier, but Mr. Stewart, I hope will pass that on. The deal for me is environmental fragmentation. I'm talking with the supervisors. I'm asking everybody to please consider when you're doing things, you can't undo that. And I don't want asphalt, and I do not want solar powers in areas that are otherwise impacted. So the environment, come on, guys, please. We can't have any of these things you're supporting without those bugs, birds, insects, and plants. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
All right, I'll move it up to the board unless, all right, perfect. I'll move it up to the board. Any discussion?
So I'm going to just share my position on this is I 100% agree the fact that you have that kind of acreage with that. I mean, I'm all 100% on green energy, right? Like, I think there's a time and a place for it. And I agree that, having that kind of acreage covered by solar panels, although it might be beneficial to the state, and I question even that, to be honest with you, the economical impact that the state's receiving from that. I wonder if anybody's really looking at that. Personally, I think that anytime we get a project of that size and magnitude, multiple environmental studies impact studies need to happen, right? And I really feel like maybe if we have done any of that stuff, it's definitely something that probably is out of date potentially, and I don't think that the state should be doing that either. I think that that's a BLM thing, and to I guess support a project like that in our own state, I really feel like the commission should consider really demanding that these environmental impact studies take place, that it's good, solid data that we can utilize, and maybe that will change the course of either putting habitat breaks in there or something that allows for both to cohabitate. I don't see it happening with that big of acreage, solar panels covering that big of acreage. I think we need to really look at the environmental impact, and this is one time where it absolutely is going to affect a lot of things, I think. So I don't know. I'm not in support of it the way that it's being portrayed here. I mean, I could probably get behind parts of it if the presentation that they give maybe answers some of those questions that I have, right? So.
Do we know when the workshops are? Is this a BLM workshop? Gene, do you happen to know? No. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I have a feeling that there's not going to be too many cabs that are in support of how it's written, how the BLM has presented this. Because I went through and tried to find the environmental impact. I didn't see anything that was at least, within the last 5 years. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I did too, and I was really surprised at that. Like, what? I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer to me, but I can't imagine that cabs are going to be in favor of that. I can't imagine that the commission would be in favor of that. That's a huge amount of space. So,
I'm not in favor of it at this point, not without some studies being done. That's a lot of land mass that's going to potentially be closed down.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just my thoughts on, go for it.
I'll comment on that real quick. Justin Small, Wildlife Staff Specialist, again for NDOW for the record. So I would recommend all of you folks to come, the board members to come. I think there'll be some really good discussion. I think Jasmine Kleiber, she used to be our tech review person. She's now the administrator over, which was just formerly diversity, now is biodiversity division at NDOW. And she's been working with this inside and out with the governor's office. And I can say that within Nevada, we're really struggling with how to navigate these, what we're calling a misalignment of scales of projects, because you got these global scale energy projects coming in that we're having to mitigate for on a regional, local scale from a wildlife standpoint. And these aren't just feeding the grid within Nevada, but they're going, they're probably Western wide. These are big scale projects.
Yeah.
And we realize there's ecosystem services to be had, and we got to balance local and rural economics with, wildlife resources. But this is something that's, seems like it's been hit kind of the fast forward button on it. And even the BLM folks that we know we're working with, they're struggling how to navigate this too. These are kind of EIS type things that they haven't had to deal with before on this kind of scale. So, but I think going forward, there's going to be some interesting conversations, and I'd recommend you guys that are interested to definitely be at this commission meeting coming up. So, but this is something I formally, before taking this position, I was the debit lead on the Sagebrush Ecosystem Program here as a SEP member. And I was Endow's representative on that, and I seen that coming before I left. The size of the surface disturbance project, especially with around green energy, had really, what was proposed on to be on the landscape a couple years ago is now just starting to come to fruition. So this is kind of the start of some of that. But I wouldn't miss the meeting.
Well, do you feel like the department feels like, I mean, what's their position on this as far as environmental impact, hazard?
Very concerned.
Yeah, so I would think that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see anybody coming out and saying, oh, no, I think we're good.
Yeah, and it's easy to say, to look at it and go, well, there's nothing about green energy that's green for wildlife. But I think there can be a balance. But it's hard to try to find a balance when you're looking at a scale of a project that's 119,000 acres as far as geographical impedance on the landscape for multiple guilds of species, not just bottom up, top down.
I don't even think the bombing range is that big.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think the bombing range is less than half of that. That's the biggest scale of
Yeah.
of land that we, don't have access to, of course, right?
Yeah.
Or limited access. But
One of the things that, now on that project, when I went down there 2 years ago and looked at all that stuff, one of the important parts was we only had the capability of 8 mega, I'm not sure of the terms, but it's megatons of transmission power.
Megawatts.
Megawatts,
Yeah.
excuse me, thank you. And
Yep.
the total project would require like 42. We can't even, so that means the batteries are gonna sit there doing nothing. Just like the tower, it's only works about 3 hours a day because they don't have any way of storing the power. There's no way of transmitting it away from them. That's
should have called Elon Musk, I guess.
That
No,
part-
just,
for your
I'm
comment.
kidding.
Yeah, but it-
Take that off the record, I'm
that part
sorry.
needs to be built before they do the other part, otherwise you got nowhere to put it.
I agree, Gene. Yeah.
And I'm sorry I interrupted time.
Oh, not at all. That was good. But that's all I have to say regarding that. But it is, and this isn't the only project, but these are hard things to navigate when you're trying to do the best thing for wildlife, but also balance ecosystem services on the landscape. Obviously, we're tasked within the state to be the checks and balances on the wildlife side to balance out the negative effects. And we have different entities within the state that, I don't want to use the term pro-industry. I don't mean that as a negative connotation, but there's the checks and balances, and we're trying to hit that, or that cross-section point.
Has the department, sought the counsel of the governor and his administration on this? Like, are they in favor of it, or have they come out with a formal statement, or?
I can't speak to that. I would have to let Alan Janae, the director, or Mike Scott, or somebody a little closer to that. I'm not privy of that. But I know they're aware of it.
Okay,
I mean, yeah. So, appreciate it.
thank you, Jason.
I don't want to speak too much on it just because I've got some other information with my job outside of this that I don't really want to discuss or anything. But I just think we need to be very aware of what's happening on our public land for private companies.
Yeah, that was a kind of another question for me was, my understanding is the majority of this land is all BLM land. And so, I mean, how is the BLM handling that with regard to allowing a private company to put their infrastructure on public lands? Like, what's the trade-off, man? Like, help me understand that, because I'm not seeing really how advantageous it is. Yeah, if they're coming forward and saying, "Hey, we're giving everybody in the state a free power," then I could see people, maybe getting excited about it. But even that, I would still question that, right? Like, let's see the guarantees on that. You know what I mean? And what expense are we going to provide that? So again, I go back to the, my viewpoint on being very fiscally conservative, but very, very much taking a liberal position when it comes to environmental impact. Man, it really concerns me that we're talking about this big of a project.
So is the feeling correct then for 9I and 9J? We do not support the energy and solar projects.
As it stands right now, like I think Justin's right. Like we should probably go, try and attend the meeting and see if, what the presentations on those are, so we can really get the magnitude of this. Just reading through the materials, I just not seeing any positives, man. I don't, I mean, I realize the obvious positive that it's creating energy, but at what expense, man? So I can't get behind that. Not as it stands right now.
All right. Do I hear a motion to not support 9I and 9J?
I would go as far to move that this body hold off on support of those two items, 9I and 9J, until we have more data and more, get to hear more about what the environmental impact's going to be on this. And like I said, as it stands right now, I'm not in favor of it. So I would motion for the board not to support that.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. No nays. Ayes take it unanimously for nothing with Member Thompson out. All right. Moving on to consent agenda item 9O, Commission Regulation 24-23, 2024 and 2025 and 2025 and 2026 upland game and fur bearer seasons and bag limits. At the June 29, 2024 meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners meeting, the commission will establish and may vote to adopt regulations for upland game birds and mammal fur bearers and wild turkeys for the 2024 and 2025 and 2025 and 2026 seasons. Once again, I think we pulled this for public comment, so I'd like to start with that, and then the board can discuss after. Please state your name for the record.
Justin Small, Wildlife Staff Specialist, upland game with Nevada Department of Wildlife. I pulled a memorandum, which is kind of a synopsis of the changes. There's some significant, I wouldn't say significant, but there is some changes. The biggest standout is, well, I guess I can go through them just by line item here. For Commission Regulation 2413, there's going to be some changes to the use season, a little bit to sage grouse, like there is every year, just adjustments based off population regulation and trajectory. Chucker and Hungarian partridge, junior wild turkey, and wild turkey spring limited entry. So I'll just start with use seasons. Use seasons will extend for the normal 9-day period from September 28th to October 6th. However, and that's just an example, that was just for 2024, same calendar schedule. It'll be just a day, I think it's a day back for 2025. But we've elected to split Chucker and Hungarian partridge seasons into their own species groups, and limits will no longer be considered in aggregate. So we're going to keep Chucker as 6 for the daily bag limit, 18 in possession, but we're actually separating, and this is going to be for youth season as well and in general season, but we're going to separate the bag limit out as Hungarian partridge is separate. At 4 is the bag limit and 12 is the overall possession. And they're no longer going to be an aggregate. So far, we've only been the only western state that's kept it as an aggregate. Idaho, Utah, I believe Montana. I'm not sure about western Nebraska and South Dakota where they have Hungarian partridge, but I believe we're the only one that still has it in an aggregate. So this provides a little bit more opportunity, but it also stops them from overshooting a bird that we're trying to propagate within the state. So the diehard chucker hunters, that's not going to probably change their narrative any. They're still going to select for chucker. If they get up a Hunt's covey, they might. There's quite a bit of habitat overlap in some regions with Hungarian partridge and chucker, especially later in the season when the chuckers come off the top. But that provides a little bit more opportunity, but we don't want to have an additive effect on a species that we're trying to propagate throughout the state. Sage grouse,
So real quick,
Yeah.
did I catch that right? The hunt, for some reason, mine's not coming up for some reason. But the Hungarian partridge bag limit is going to be 4, you said?
it's going to be 4,
4 with a possession limit of 12.
12. It's always 3 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then chucker, is that going to change from?
Nope.
It's going to stay at 6?
It's going to stay at 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just won't be an aggregate. It'll just be 6 chucker, 18 for the limit, 18 in possession. So we just pulled that out. Chucker can,
The seasons don't overlap, or they do?
I'm sorry, the seasons are the same.
Okay.
The bag limit is
guess
what,
that's what
I apologize. Yeah. So, recommendations, the seasons will run parallel, like with most of our other, species within the same, so like California quail, Gambel's quail, mountain quail, they all run parallel. But with Hungarian partridge and chucker, the recommended is October 12th for 2024, opening for chucker. Same as for Hungarian partridge, and it's going to be the same for 2025. It'll just be a day back.
Gotcha.
Yep, and they'll
So-
close the same date.
And I'm sorry for asking this clarifying question, and I feel silly. I should know the answer to this, but hunter chucker forever. But so as a regulation is right now, if you go out, you can shoot 6 birds that can be either chucker or Hungarian partridge, but 6 birds total,
Exactly.
right? So if you shot 4 Hungarian partridge, you could only shoot 2 chucker. Is that correct?
No. So we are changing, you can shoot 6 chucker this year if it goes through, and you could shoot 4
4,
because they're separated. They're no longer an aggregate.
Right now, they're
Right now,
aggregate.
you could shoot 4 chucker and 2 Hungarian partridge, or you could shoot 6 Hungarian partridge, 5 Hungarian partridge, and 1
No
chucker.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
you can shoot all chucker.
Yeah.
It's an aggregate.
Yeah.
So this provides a little bit more opportunity
Yeah,
as
for
far
sure it
as
does.
overall bag limit, but it also prevents from, I feel, it prevents from overharvesting Hungarian partridge. Not that that's a huge concern, but that is something we're in the process of right now working with some regional biologists, eastern and western region, to try to bring Hungarian partridge more west. We've got some really good habitat that they could really, I feel, their populations could take advantage of. And we're trying to, they've always been considered a bonus bird in a lot of western states. Idaho
Nevada
has,
for sure, right? I mean,
yeah, and I mean, myself, I'm a little prejudiced. I like to actually hunt them. At certain times of the year more, I think they taste better. So,
totally.
and especially the type of, the folks in Nevada that hunt chucker, they can tell the difference when a covey flushes versus, I mean, typically there's early in season, there's some habitat overlap, but you can tell the difference when they flush. But we feel that'll, like I said, not to be too redundant, but that'll provide a little bit extra opportunity without allowing those species, especially like in the winter of 22, 23 in eastern Elko County when we had a lot of birds in the roads. And we're not saying people's going around solution them, but when those birds get really snowbound, it prevents one species from really being selected. And I don't want to overstate that. I don't think that was the case large scale, but I just know in some of the other states like Utah and Idaho, that can be a little bit of an issue. So, but here it's mainly to provide more sportsman's opportunity and to pull them out of the aggregate.
Yeah, I think I can appreciate that.
Yeah. But I'll state again, the seasons will remain the same. Opener is going to remain the same and closure remain the same. We typically close that first week of February. We actually discussed pushing it back a week into February, closing a little later. But we're different. We have a different climate here in Nevada, and I think a lot of people lump us into other Intermountain West states when we're really not Intermountain West. We're more Great Basin driven climatically. And we actually have pair bonding starting to happen with Chucker in the middle of the season when other states are still allowing you to hunt the second season or the second week in February. So we don't want to reduce any chance of breeding opportunity and fecundity with mates. So we started just a little bit earlier, usually a week or two earlier in other states, but we also were a little bit restrictive on the back end. We still give same amount of time to hunt, but we want to be careful of that.
I appreciate that.
So I'll jump over to sage grouse real quick. I can just rip through this. We have included the biggest changes here in the Central Basin Range areas of Eureka, Lander, and Nye counties. We expanded the hunt from, we included 2 more units. So it'll be, instead of 2 last year, it'll be 4 this year, 161, 162, and 172, and 173. So both area 16 and 17 of those units. And it's going to be, instead of a 2-day season, a 9-day season. We talked to the biologist down there and he said, it's so isolated that a lot of folks just don't come out from the western region. The people in the eastern region aren't coming out to hunt there anyways because it's better sage grouse populations in the eastern region. And he really didn't have a lot in the wing barrels. We know we're not having no additive effect to population. It's compensatory mortality. Even if we go 9-day, we're pretty confident the population can handle that. And
Are you guys seeing any improvement in that? In that population at all?
we are. So across the range, and there is some nuances to it, and not all leks and lek complexes meaning the overall lek clusters within a certain area, is seeing increase, but we are seeing about a 20 to 25% population gain across the state.
So
And we've been in this 10-year kind of, it's cyclical with sage grouse, 10, 11 years. We've been in this trough and we are starting to pull out of it.
that's awesome.
So that's good. We hope we get back to the last peak. It's usually this stair-step effect. But with these coming off these last 2 really good winters, habitat conditions are really good. I think we're gonna be okay, at least in the interim. So, and we're still very careful, very restricted, that we don't take any more of 5% of the population to not have an additive effect. But we're still going to hold for, we're recommending as of last season, 012 and 013, and then 031 and 051, we're going to keep that as a 2-day season.
031 and
031 and 051.
So we're talking Sheldon and
So Sheldon will not, we didn't get the lek data from the Sheldon, so the Sheldon will not be included. It wasn't included last year
so
as
it's
well.
closed, right?
It's still closed.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the Montanas and then the Santa Rosas will be
Roses
open.
are good.
And so the Montana's 031 carries the western population, and that's what makes the wing bee, when we collect the data, it really shoots it up, and folks know where to hunt there. So I would not feel comfortable having I don't have my wing bee data up, but I'm like, when I look at the amount of grouse killed in 2 days, I'm like, holy smokes. Like, I don't want to do a 9-day season there. People are very successful, but that's, of that area, that population kind of carries that area.
So has the areas in like area 7 in like the Hunter Draw off of 93, Hunter Draw all the way to Pequab, has that improved at all?
So I haven't queried Q8 and QC the data, but lek numbers are looking really good in that area
So
too.
great.
Yep. And we are gonna,
As a kid, I can remember
oh,
just thousands of birds all over the place, anywhere you went, you know?
yeah, like the Tuscarora lek and some of them back in the day, they were,
Just crazy,
close to 200 birds there.
yeah.
And, so for Elko County, 062, 064, 067, 071 through 076, 101 and 102, that's gonna be the open units there. That's gonna be a 9-day season. And then we've already went over Chucker and Huns, and then just junior wild turkey. We're recommending to expand the junior season one additional week on the front end to give youth a little bit more opportunity, and I'm really big on that. I want the youth to get out there, and this is the time when they can get out there and have an additional week before the general season starts. Tag numbers for youth and for general season going to remain static. Going to remain the same. The only modifications that we're doing for wild turkey season, for general wild turkey, is we're recommending closing Unit 101 based off of really Matt Jeffers and Scott Roberts' knowledge of that area. Specifically, Matt Jeffers knows that area really well, and they said that they felt like the turkey populations are low enough coming through 22 and 23 that we need to close it. I think there's only 1 or 2 tags that we had for it anyway, so we're just going to close that for a year. That's what we're
And it's
recommending.
still all, even in the general season, it's still all by tag only, right?
It is, yeah. The only area that's not is we have the Paradise Valley exclusively private land hunt to accommodate the landowners there, where they can regulate those turkey populations that are growing fairly exponentially.
And
So
Lyon County, we did away with that, right?
we did, and I don't think it came back. I would have to look, but
Yeah, I think it was a number of years ago. We
yeah,
did away with
it was, I think, 202 portion of Lyon County. There might be one tag there, but as far as Lyon County itself, no. Mesa Valley is going to have a couple tags.
Okay.
Nothing, no different in Turkey from last year. Just we're closing 101. That's it for upland game.
No changes to mountain quail then, huh?
Nope. We're going to hold that. I am wanting to start a mountain quail research project. That doesn't really have to do with this commission regulation, but mountain quail is one of my favorite species, and I'm doing all I can for quail in Nevada. I think Sean's done a really good job in the past, and Stan Stiver, but I'm working with quail forever, and we're starting to put out more camera stations up here to get more population densities, and not only occupancy, but where we can see what kind of, get a rough index of what kind of mountain quail populations we have. And I'm
I was
actually
really
thinking,
happy to see as many mountain quails we saw this last year in Desert Creek
yeah,
and over in the Buffalo Hills. I couldn't believe
Yeah.
how many mountain quail we saw in Buffalo Hills. That was
Yeah.
insane.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen that many there, like 1 or 2 maybe, but we saw 2 coveys that were full coveys. Like
yeah.
I had to do a double take. Go, holy crud, those were mountain quail.
Yeah, I actually had several hunters call back in and give me locations on mountain quail. And I'm like, well, thanks. I'll put that down as far as
I marked
places. But
on Onyx, so
yeah, and I said, but I'm not going to send people in there to shoot them for you.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that's your private locations, but they wanted me to know as the upland game biologist, kind of like where they'd seen them, where I could go in, possibly could put cameras and see what kind of covey size. Some of the covey sizes were, actually, I was impressed.
I was impressed with the ones in
Yeah.
Buffalo Hills. I'd never seen that.
Yeah,
Anyway, well, good. Appreciate that.
yeah, you bet.
I would move to support the recommendations from the department for upland game birds and for the setting seasons and bag limits for the 2025, 2026 year. Are we setting for all 4 years, right?
24,
We set
25,
for 4 years? No, it's just 2 years.
Yeah. 26. Yep.
Okay.
All right, do I hear a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. All good say nay. The ayes take unanimous 4-0 with Member Thompson out. Moving on, that'll
Chair,
close.
Chair
consent-
Fleming, before we move on, I noticed that I didn't add the commitments to the future meetings on the agenda. So if you could combine that with either like future agenda items or public comment, and I could give you the dates for that
Yes.
when you're ready.
Yes, let's move through. Let's do it right now. So future agenda items. Do we hear any? Nothing? Okay. Yeah, and then so right here, Brianna, do you want to did I miss that or is it not on the?
I think you
No.
added it in the second email you sent out, right?
No, it's not. I don't see it at all. So I would just tell you the dates right now.
Perfect. Let's do that.
Okay,
if you don't
so
mind.
there's the June 28th and June 29th in Lovelock. And then there's August 16th and the 17th in Elko.
August what?
August 16th and 17th.
17th, Elko, and then this weekend in Lovelock. Anyone want to go to Lovelock?
Did we get commitments for Lovelock? Tim, did you commit to it? I thought I showed that.
I thought it was Danny
Okay.
and myself. And Danny said, I think Danny said he could be there. I said if not, I could just listen, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make it.
I can actually go if I need to. I won't be able to go Saturday. I can go Friday, but I won't be able to go Saturday if Danny's not going to go. I'll check with him. And if not, then I can make it happen.
Okay, perfect. Elko for August 16th and the 17th. I will not be able to do that. I mean, I can commit to doing it online. I just won't be able to be there in person.
Yeah. I can, I don't know. I'm supposed to go scout for moose that day. It's the weekend before the moose season, right? My buddy, my partner, Craig Santos did. So I'm actually going on that tag, on that hunt with him, which I think I'm more excited about that than I am my own tag that I got, my elk tag that I got. So I can tentatively schedule that. Let me just make sure that we're not going to already be up there. We may already be up there, and if that's the case, I'll just go to the meeting and then head up to where we're camped out up. So
Perfect. Thank you for bringing that up, Brianna. All right, moving on to one last final public comment. State your name for the record, Mr. French.
Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you all for the time and consideration that you're giving this huge amount of information and your recommendations. I really am concerned. Also, one of the things about your seasonal considerations on tagging or such, because seasons are becoming quite odd. Our fire seasons now are pretty much year-round. Other things are changing as far as winter, summer, fall. And so keep the flexibility on that. I think it's a good idea to only make these incremental changes for 2 years. That way you can adjust if necessary. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here. This is always educational and appreciate you. Thank you.
appreciate you, Mr. French.
Yep, thank you, sir. All right. With no more public comment, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll read it. Yeah, there you go. We jumped the gun there, got me all thrown off. All right, meeting's adjourned at 6:53 p.m.